Hi Math PLP. This is a study guide to help you get ready for your Spiral Exam 2. This test is a final cumulative exam for everything you've studied in algebra so far. So you want to make sure that you go over all the concepts that you've learned and look over the problems. So this study guide will cover about 10 of the key concepts. You should also review your Spiral Exam number 1 review, because those concepts will be on it as well. And remember, the test is multiple choice. So the first question or concept we're going to cover is you need to be able to rewrite a linear equation or formula for a given variable. So we're going to solve or rewrite the equation for y. So that means that you're going to get y by itself. So you're going to undo what's being done to the y variable. So you're going to add 13x to both sides, which will give you 4y equals 15 plus 13x, and then divide both sides by 4. We'll go ahead and divide that 4 between both of those numbers. So 15 fourths plus 3 fourths x. Now on the second one, we're going to do the same thing, solve for y, but we're going to put it in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, because it's always good to remember how to do that. So let's add our 5x to both sides, and when we rewrite, we will put the 5x term first. Then let's divide everything by 3. So we'll be left with y equals 5/3, that's our slope, x, plus 4. Number 2, we want to solve or rewrite this equation for c. And this is a formula, so you just look at what's happening to c and you undo it. So we're going to subtract ab from both sides. We don't know what those variables stand for, so we can't combine them with e. So we just subtract them. Then we're going to divide by d, because right now it's multiplying by c. So c equals e minus ab, all divided by d. Now let's look at the next concept. You need to be able to read a real-life situation, set up, and solve an equation for that situation. So Glenna wants to rent a car for a trip to Key West for a week. She calls 2 car rental companies to get prices. Mr. Cotter's Rentals rents a Cadillac Escalade for $99 for 1 week plus 11 cents per mile. Barbarino's Rentals has the same vehicle for $75 per week and 15 cents per mile. How many miles would Glenna drive for the cost to be the same from those rental companies? So what we're looking for is miles. So we will let x equal our number of miles. And then I'm going to make note of the word the same. In math, when you see that what you're talking about is equal. So we're going to set up 2 math expressions for the cost and set them equal to each other. So Mr. Cotter's is $99 plus 11 cents per mile. Barbarino's is $75 per week plus 15 cents per mile. And when we see same, we set them equal to each other. Now when we solve, we're going to find out how many miles Glenna drives in order for that cost to be equal. So we'll subtract our 0.11x from each side, and then subtract our 75. So we'll get, not 22, 24 equals 0.04x. Then we divide both sides by 0.04. So the number of miles she needs to go for that cost to be the same is 600 miles. Now let's look at the next concept. You want to be able to use function notation to evaluate functions. So you're given the function f of x equals 5x minus 12. You need to find x when f of x equals 15. So notice what we know is f of x, and so we're going to substitute in 15 for f of x. So we write f of x equals 5x minus 12. Then just solve from there. So 5x equals 27. Divide both sides by 5. So x equals 27 fifths. And then on number 5, we have an exponential function. F of x equals 5 times 3 to the x power. So what is f of 2? What that means is that we're going to replace the x value now with 2. So we can write it as f of 2. Remember, that's nothing mathematical. It's just giving us a record of what we've plugged in. So we'll do the power first. 3 squared is 9, and then 5 times 9 is 45. So when we plug in 2, we get 45. Our next concept is to distinguish between linear and nonlinear functions from graphs, tables, and equations. So in number 6, the table below represents parts of a linear function. When x equals 3, what is the value of y? So first of all, let's look at what's happening with our inputs. So we go 0 to 1, so we're adding 1 here. 1 to 3, so we are adding 2. And then 3 to 4, we are adding 1 again. And then we just look at the numbers that we were given. So we have 6 and 24. Well, we know here that in one step, in this x, that we increased 6. So that means in one step from 3 to 4, we will increase 6. So we can just subtract 6 from 24 to get that value, which would be 18. On number 7, we want to figure out what type of function is represented by that table below. Quadratic, linear, exponential, or none of these. So first of all, let's look and see if we have a multiplier to see if it's exponential. So to get from -5 to 20, we can multiply by -4. So let's see if we can do the same thing to get to the next number. We can't, because that would need to be a -80, and it's a -70. So we definitely know it's not exponential. Let's see if it's linear. So let's see what we need to add or subtract to get from one to the other. So to get from -5 to +20, we would need to add 25. To get from +20 to -70, we would need to subtract 90. So right away I can see that that is not a linear. I'm going to go ahead and continue with my differences and then to check second differences. So -7 to 320, or sorry, -70 to 320, we would need to add 390. So now let's check second differences. To get from 25 to -90, we would need to subtract 115. To get from -90 to 390, we would need to add 480. So we can tell that this is a none of these function. Now let's look at the next concept. We want to identify the terms of an arithmetic and geometric sequence. So given the sequence a sub n equals -7 plus 2 times n minus 1, determine the seventh term in the sequence. This is an arithmetic sequence because we have a difference that we're adding. It's the 2 each time. So to find the seventh term, we're going to plug in 7 for n. So we'll take -7 plus 2 times 7 minus 1. So -7 plus 2 times 6. -7 plus 12. So the seventh term in the sequence is 5. Now we're given the geometric sequence, and I can tell because I've got a multiplier. So we want to determine the third term in that sequence. So we'll plug in 3 for n. -2 times 5 to the 3 minus 1 power. So negative 2 times 5 to the second power. Remember to do your powers first. So negative 2 times 25 is negative 50. So the third term in this sequence is negative 50. You need to be able to analyze data sets to identify the slope, which is the rate of change in a real-life situation, and the y-intercept, which is the starting value or initial amount. So this table shows the distance, d in miles, traveled by a car after so many hours, t number of hours. What is the rate of change in miles per hour for this situation? So when you see rate of change, that is slope in a real-life situation. So distance is our output, or we can think of it as our y value. So we can take y1, so I'm going to start y2 minus y1, so I'm going to take 180 and subtract 60. And then x2 minus x1. So 3 minus 1. So 120 over 2, 60. And then we need to label miles per hour. That's our rate of change. The graph of y equals negative 2x plus 5 is shown below. If the slope of the graph becomes half of what it is, which statement below would be true? So that would be the equation y equals negative half of 2 is 1. So negative 1x plus 5. So you can see if we were to graph that our y-intercept would still be at 5. But our slope would be a little less steep, down 1 over 1. So what's going to change is our x-intercept. Notice that the y-intercept stays the same. So we know it's not the first choice. The second one, the x-intercept and the y-intercept would both stay the same. Nope. The x-intercept would stay the same while the y would, and that's not correct. And then finally the x-intercept would change while the y-intercept would stay the same. So that's what would happen. For our last two problems, we want to write linear equations from the given information. So we have a line that passes through 3, 4 and has a slope of negative 2. Write the equation of the line. Well, remember, let's write down slope-intercept. So y equals mx plus b. The two things we need to know are the slope and the y-intercept. So right now we know the slope and a point, xy. So we can just plug in those values and find out what our b value is. So we'll have y, or 4, equals m, our slope, negative 2, times x, which is 3, plus b. And then we can just do the math to solve for b. So our b, or y-intercept, is 10. And now we can plug in our slope and that value to write the equation of this new line. Lastly, identify the slope of a line that is parallel to this line, 3x minus 5y equals 11, and the slope of the line that is perpendicular to that line. So you need to remember parallel slopes are the same. Their perpendicular slopes are the negative reciprocal. So first of all, let's get this equation in slope-intercept form so we can take a look at it. We'll divide by negative 5. So y equals 3/5 x minus 11/5. So our original slope is 3/5. So our parallel slope will be the same. Our perpendicular slope, we want to make negative and then flip it for the reciprocal. Alright, that concludes all of the review problems, and these problems came from the 2 new units that you covered from the last spiral. So units 3A, 3B, 4A, and 4B. Be sure to look over your notes and problems from each unit and concept to get ready for the test. So look at the list on your study guide, make a note on that study guide, on that handout, of any concepts that you will study further. And finally, watch the next video in the playlist, Spiral Exam Success, and then answer the questions below. Good luck, you're going to do great.